I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about meat consumption and the morality of consuming animal products. Now, I'm nowhere near going vegan or vegetarian quite yet, so I didn't feel too bad about buying a McChicken for myself to eat. But at the same time, I've reached a point where I kind of feel morally ambiguous about throwing another piece of factory farmed chicken into a lake. This ritual began 2 years ago. I was in a Twitch chat with a streamer that I follow, and we were discussing how silly the 4th of July seems to Brits. Partly because detonating explosives in residential areas is a distinctly American ritual, but also because maybe America, the country, isn't necessarily worth celebrating in such a bombastic fashion. So we joked about what might make a more appropriate ritual, and I suggested desecrating an iconic piece of American culture. For example, maybe to celebrate the 4th of July, you could throw a McChicken into a lake. And then I realized that there was no reason for me not to do that, so I drove to a McDonald's, bought a McChicken, then walked to the lake and threw the McChicken in. Then I did it again last year, almost unintentionally, and then I did it again this year. But the difference between this year and last year is that I've spent the past year studying philosophy pretty intensively, and it's given me a new perspective on this ritual that I've developed for myself. So, back to the consumption of animal products thing. I think that it is immoral to consume unnecessary animal products, as long as the current factory farming situation remains as it is. Throwing a McChicken into a lake is definitely unnecessary, which means that by purchasing this McChicken, I have knowingly committed an immoral action. And unlike every single other person in that McDonald's drive-thru, I can't even claim plausible ignorance. I was very aware, while ordering this McChicken, that it was immoral for me to do so. But then, on a meta-ethical level, I'm actually kind of a moral nihilist. So if it's immoral for me to throw this McChicken into the lake, it's only because something subjective has decided that this is the case. But we could also argue with the premise that throwing this McChicken into the lake is unnecessary. After all, rituals are important to humans. There is not a single human culture anywhere without rituals. So now it becomes a question of which rituals we choose to embrace. Do I participate in the national ritual of detonating explosives in residential areas, which is rather bad for the environment, disruptive to anyone who doesn't participate, and I personally find uncomfortable? Or do I participate in this personal ritual, which is relatively better for the environment, although it does contribute to the mass torture and slaughter of chickens? Sometimes it's an interesting thought experiment to phrase two alternatives as uncharitably as you can, and then compare them. Imagine that you live in a culture which does neither of these rituals. Now ask yourself which one is better: detonating explosives in the middle of a population center, or allowing an innocent animal to be slaughtered and then sacrificing a piece of its meat. When you phrase them in this way, both alternatives seem kind of awful. Anyway, I've made my choice. There's a meta-ethical theory called emotivism. The ethical emotivist believes that morality is completely subjective, and really ethics are an expression of human emotion. To say that slaughtering an innocent chicken is bad is equivalent to saying that slaughtering an innocent chicken makes you uncomfortable. And the thing is, throwing that McChicken into the lake did make me feel uncomfortable. So, according to the ethical emotivist, am I an immoral person? There was a sign right next to me that read, "It's your lake, keep it clean." And then I dirtied the waters with a McChicken, mayonnaise spilling out onto the lake like the blood of a commodity sandwich. The original purpose of this ritual was to mock the bombastic nature of the 4th of July, and call into question the values of contemporary American culture. But this year, the ritual was a lot more personal. It made me reflect on myself and my own rituals and values. So perhaps there was some utility to the death of this chicken sandwich. After all, it has made me a more morally conscious person. But then, being more morally conscious and being more ethical are different things. And if you study ethics without trying to become a more ethical person, then what's the point?